really thank the way America was built for that being the way it is now. America is built upon laws and fairness and doing the right thing. With regard to race, creed, and every other category you can slide somebody into. So we have this tremendous system in this country where the law and fairness should reign supreme over everything else. So when we see fairness not being prioritized and we start to see racism and discrimination in blacks and Latinos and Asians and every other group being slighted and not being given any opportunities, well, the only way to correct that is to govern it, to put a law in place, to put policies in place to make things fair, because you can't just count on people who have these ideas that we're better than them. You can't count on these people to all of a sudden from within their heart say, you know what, I'm going to change the way I think. So you have to give them a little bit of encouragement. You say, all right, Delta, if you make it easier for black pilots to become a pilot, for instance, because a lot of people have been talking about that, black pilots. If you do this, we might give you a tax break, or we might give you some incentives to make sure that you do that, because we need more diversity when it comes to pilots. We're going to make sure these pilots are qualified and they're ready. But they're going to get an opportunity they probably wouldn't have gotten because everybody really wants to see an old white guy flying their plane. I'm just going to say it. Everybody wants to see that because they've never seen a black woman flying their plane, or they've rarely seen it, or they've never seen. Go ahead.
I think it's not just white men or white people that are being impacted by this DEI. It's also all races, because depending on that criteria, black people or people of color are being passed over. Okay, so it's not that simple, because they have to meet a certain formula or a certain percentage. So they have to have the people who identify a certain way. So a black person's going to lose that slot just as much as a white person. It's not that simplistic. My view, however, is that these jobs, particularly certain jobs like Secret Service, where we've seen some craziness, including some new reports that came out just yesterday, which we could talk about in a few minutes, where you put this other stuff, this feel-good stuff. Let's hire a person that's transgender over someone that may have more qualifications. I think if you're going to just pick them because they're transgender, that's a dangerous thing.
That's not what happens. Usually somebody brings out an issue of, I wasn't given an opportunity. I'm qualified. I meet all the requirements. I have all the education necessary. I check all boxes. The only box I don't check is I happen to be transgender, or I happen to be black, or I happen to be Latino. See, this is what we're talking about. See, you're trying to be slick here. You're trying to make it seem like they're just saying, hey, you're transgender, want to be a pilot? Or you want to be Secret Service?
Yeah, and you know what? If you're going to be that simplistic, there may be an element of that, Mert. I mean, you're phrasing it that simplistically, but I think they would give favor to someone if it met their agenda, their quota, whatever you want to call it. And even the Supreme Court of the United States of America has chimed in when it came into the education system. This is wrong. It's wrong. Look, I'm all for inclusion. Don't get me. I don't think we should have just white pilots. By the way, I've been on airplanes with black pilots and arrived safely. It has nothing to, and I've been on airplanes with female pilots and I've arrived safely. So it's not a matter of that, okay? But it's a matter of, you cannot sublimate qualifications in all instances, particularly when you have high profile, extremely technical work. And that would be pilots, okay? That would be Secret Service.
I disagree with that, because what happens when you have an abundance of qualified people? See, this is what we're missing out on. There are so many qualified people. And if we say we're going to take, out of all these qualified people, we're going to start selecting minorities or somebody who usually wouldn't get an opportunity because it's easier just to hire what we're used to. See, this is the nuances that we're not being honest about, because we're trying to make it seem like the people who are getting these opportunities aren't capable, when that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well,
I think
based on some performances, like the Secret Service with the assassination attempt, and this thing up in Boston that was reported the other day, where Secret Service broke into a nail salon that was around the corner from a Harris fundraiser so they could use the toilet.
Now, let me ask you a question about that situation. Were those women, transgender Secret Service people who were breaking into these restrooms,
well, you know what,
and using them?
I don't have their sexual identities or their preferences, because
so you can't,
it's based on a news report. But I will tell you that there's no justification for trespassing and breaking into a store to use the toilet. What kind of genius would do that? That's a criminal.
Well, okay? Lucas, something
is wrong. Something is wrong. Okay.
That's a different.
And one other point I want to make, okay, Mert, before we go to the break. A friend of mine, as you know, it rained 3 days in New York this week, okay? And she happened to be on Delta, and her flight out of LaGuardia was canceled, okay? She tried to contact customer service. She had to use the chat. You know, now everything's with chat on the mobile app. So she sent me a picture. So when she inquired about the cancellation and rebooking, she got the following response. Ready? There are 77 guests in front of you, and your expected wait time is 559 minutes. 559 minutes.
Lucas,
that's like 9.5 hours, Mert.
You're a master at spinning things, because I like how you
I'll tell you what. Instead of worrying about DEI and pronouns, why don't you worry about customer service and answering the telephone?
Right past it. You're skilled at this. I give you credit. You're skilled at getting past stuff you don't want to address, because I was trying to ask you a simple question. You blew right past it. I'll give you credit. You're slick. I'll give you credit for that, because I wanted you to address. You were talking about DEI, and you switched it to trespassing. What does DEI have to do with trespassing?
I think there are problems with DEI.
What does that have to do with trespassing, though? That has nothing to do with trespassing.
What geniuses, what officers, law officers, would break the law? That doesn't make sense to me, Mert.
You're assuming that these people are a certain demographic or a certain DEI hire.
Demographic.
These could have been typical person you hire for these positions.
I'm just saying, this is not the Secret Service I know, so DEI is not working. And
you don't know that these were what you
was working properly.
Let me ask you a question. What does a DEI Secret Service agent look like? What is that?
I don't know. I don't know.
So you can't say these were DEI hires. That's what I'm saying. You got to be careful. Crime does not have to be.
Video in the Trump assassination, there were a few.
That's different than this trespassing situation.
Well, this trespassing has a video also, and to be honest with you, I have not looked at the video. I've just heard media reports. But in any event, wow. We have to go to a break, and when we come back, that went fast, we're going to be joined by our first guest, Hogan Gidley, who was the communications advisor and former deputy press secretary to President Donald Trump. So stay tuned. More when we return.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York